Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you know that I tend to do about 2, sometimes 3 videos a week on this channel. But about 6 months ago, I went on vacation. And during that vacation, I did a deep dive into a beautiful deck called The Tarot of the Holy Light by Payne-Towler. And here's the box to that deck. So I did a deep dive with this while I was on vacation, and that series lasted for about 50 days. And then when I came back to my regular schedule, I continued using this deck because I love it so much. And now, I'm not going on vacation, but I am going to be away from my home and from my office for almost a month. So I decided, why not do another deep dive? I thought I'd do a deep dive into a different deck. I was thinking between maybe an Atea or a Pappas, but I landed on Pappas because I don't think I'm really ready for Atea. I've got it all mapped out in my head how I want to approach Atea. I want to start with Atea's petite deck of 36 cards, I think. It's similar to Le Normand. And then when I've gotten that under my belt, I thought I would launch into the full-blown Grande Atea. So I wanted to set that aside. I wanted to just do a Pappas deck. And so I ordered the deck. And then guess what? This was about a month before I'm going to be leaving for this winter camp that I'm going to be teaching at. I ordered the deck, and I waited, and then I waited, and you know what? I decided I'd just check with the creator of the deck and ask when I could expect to receive it. I thought I'd be able to receive it within a month, no problem. The creator told me that that deck would maybe not even ship out for about 3 or 4 maybe weeks. And so I decided I had to rethink my plan. I had to decide on another deck. And then it struck me. Now the reason why I decided I wanted to do the Pappas deck was I wanted to do something within the Continental Tarot system. Yeah, the Continental Tarot predates the Golden Dawn decks. You know the Golden Dawn decks, the Rider-Waite-Smith, the deck drawn by Pamela Coleman-Smith for Arthur E. Waite. The Thoth deck is also part of the Golden Dawn tradition. Yeah, Aleister Crowley came from the Golden Dawn and created a deck with Lady Frida Harris. There are so many decks out there within that Golden Dawn tradition. But I have been focusing on the Continental tradition, which predates that system. The Continental Tarot system is one that grew out of the earlier decks like Tarot de Marseille and the antique Italian decks like the Visconti Sforza. And there's a whole group of Continental Tarots. And there were the esoterica around those tarots grew. And one of the key authors that I can think of is Eliphas Levi, who wrote extensively on the tarot. And so we have this formulated Continental Tarot system, and this is a newly created deck from that system. And so I wanted to stay within that system, so I thought a Pappas deck would work beautifully. However, like I said, that Pappas deck is going to take a while to get here. So then I remembered that the creator of this deck, the wonderful Payne-Towler, had mentioned to me that she had, in her words, cut her teeth in tarot on a deck called the Egyptian Tarot by Zain. Now, I have had that deck, and a copy of that deck, sitting on my shelf for years, for about 3 years. Why? And why haven't I used it? Well, I haven't used it because it's a little bit difficult. Why did I get it then? I got it because when I got back into tarot a few years ago, and I started realizing that I got it now. I started understanding how to read the cards. I felt more comfortable with the cards, especially cards in the Rider-Waite-Smith system. And I thought, it would be so cool if I could find a deck that was published when I was born, like my birthday deck. We have our soul decks, right? One of my soul decks, I've done a few videos using, yeah, called the Spacious Tarot. I call that my first soul deck. And I've got another video explaining why that is my soul deck. But I thought it'd be nice to have a birthday deck, right? A deck for when I was born. That was 1964. So I wanted to get a deck that was published in 1964. So I did a little bit of a search, and I saw that the Egyptian Tarot by Zain was published in 1964. So I decided to pay a little bit of money and order a copy of that deck online. Now, believe it or not, this is my deck. I have the box somewhere. The box was already a little bit damaged and I wanted to protect it, and so I put it somewhere safe, and now, for the life of me, I cannot find it. But the deck is in here. It's a rather petite deck. It's black and white. And here's the book that I got for it. Now, this book, after I purchased it, I realized it's not an easy read. It's not like a nicely laid out, easy to follow little white book that we get with a lot of our Rider-Waite-Smith based decks, or even some of the large tomes that come with our Rider-Waite-Smith decks, like a book by, let's see, gosh, their names are not coming up in my head right now. The Goddesses of Tarot that we think of. I'll put their names down here. All names have now flown from my mind. Very sorry, but you've just seen those names. Mary Greer was one of them. Mary Greer. And, well, you saw the names below. I know you have. So they write very logically, very easy to read books, for me at least. This book is not that. It's separated out into like weekly lessons, and it's just hard. So I got the deck, I had this deck, and this deck is actually not that easy for me to see. It's a little bit, I said it's black and white. Actually, it's kind of a charcoal gray on white. And so I decided to also get the color version. Now, this was produced much later. This was produced in around 2003, I think. This is the color version of this deck. Now, let me show you the box. It's a beautiful deck, a very interesting system. But like I said, they've been languishing on my shelf, waiting for the right time for me to dive into them. And so this is the time for me to dive into them. And so that's what I'm going to do. Now, this deck, just to give you a little bit of background, this deck is based on a couple of earlier decks, which are also probably based on earlier work as well. The first one that I'd like to mention is a deck called the Egyptian Tarot, created by René Falconier and Maurice Otto Wegner. Now, these two gentlemen, around the turn of the century, drew up a tarot deck, a beautiful, simple tarot deck, which was a system different from what would later be the Golden Dawn, and decks like the Rider-Waite-Smith, but also different from the continental system as well. This is a system in and of itself. And so Falconier and Wegner drew this deck. And not too long after that, a man who went by the name of Comte C de Saint-Germain, which is different from the Count de Saint-Germain in the 1700s. This gentleman was alive around the turn of the 19th century as well. And his real name is Edgar de Valcourt-Vermont. This person used the Falconier-Wagner deck to draw a new set of cards or images. And it's from that deck that Zain drew his, and even later, Stuart Kaplan in 1980 drew another deck based on the Comte de C. Saint-Germain, which is based on the René Falconier and Maurice Otto Wegner deck. So there's this whole genealogy of tradition. Again, I'm focusing on the CC Zain deck, but after looking at that tradition, I wanted to get something that might be closer to this deck's predecessor. And I found a deck by Stuart Kaplan that I've ordered. I have no idea when it's going to get here. It probably won't get to me until after I've gone to work at the camp. But it'll be here when I return. And I will still be in the middle of my deep dive then. So this is my plan. I looked at the calendar. And so the new moon, the next new moon after I come back from my teaching at a camp. Now there's a new moon that happens while I'm at the camp. The next new moon after that camp happens to be on February the 20th. So I thought I'll start on I'll look at February 20th and I'll count backwards 50 days. I'm imagining another 50-day deep dive. 50 days and find out where that first video could land. And you know what? It turns out that January 1st happens to be 50 days away from the second new moon of the new year. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start this series starting January 1st and continue going until the second new moon on February 20th. So what is the deep dive going to look like? Well, if you saw my first deep dive with the Tarot of the Holy Light, you'll know that what I did was I pulled a card every day, and then because this was a very unfamiliar system for me at the time, I did a 3-card spread to help me unpack the card that I had pulled from this deck. And the deck I used for my helper deck, my crutch deck, was the Lightseer's Tarot, one that was very easy for me to read with and is very comfortable and convenient for me. It's a deck that I can just toss cards from when I don't really want to think about it too hard. I just want something that will just open for me without much concentration, without much focus. That's the kind of, when I want a deck like that, the Lightseers works perfectly for me. So I used that deck to help me unpack the daily draw cards from this deck. Now, I'm a little more comfortable with this deck. I'm not saying that I'm proficient. I'm not saying that it's that easy a read. However, I'm comfortable enough with this deck now that I will use this to unpack the cards that I draw, my daily draw from this deck. So what I'll do is I'll draw a card from my gray and white so back up a little bit. This deck is very precious to me. I don't want to riffle shuffle this deck. I want to keep it in order, and I don't want to stress it out too much because it's not that easy to find. And this isn't really the best copy of this deck in the world, but still, it's mine, it's precious to me, and I want to keep it safe. And I want to keep it in good condition. So, what I'm going to do is, this one is easy to replace, easy to get copies of, not that expensive. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the color version for my shuffle. I'm going to shuffle the heck out of this deck, and I'm going to pull my daily draw card. And then I will pull that card from this deck. And I'll lay them side by side just so I'll see some differences between the new color version and the old gray, charcoal gray and white version. Charcoal gray and white. And then I'll pull 3 cards from the Tarot of the Holy Light to help me unpack my daily draw. And then I'll go through the day and I'll see how this daily draw card, which will be informed by the 3 cards drawn from the Tarot of the Holy Light, how they revealed themselves or how they showed themselves to me or did not show themselves to me during the day. That's very similar to the process I did the last time. So this is my daily draw deck. I'll shuffle this one and then I'll pull that card from the gray and white one. And then I'll unpack that card with a 3-card draw from the Tarot of the Holy Light. And I'll continue in that way until I get back from the camp. And when I get back from the camp, I will probably also have the deck by Stuart Kaplan. And I've also ordered a colored version of the one by Comte C. de Saint-Germain, a redrawing of that by a different artist in color. The Stuart Kaplan deck is going to be black on sepia tone background. And then I'm going to have that really, really colored version redrawing of the Comte C. de Saint-Germain's deck. So I'll figure out if I want to incorporate those into my daily draw, what I'm going to do with that. I might just wait to use those when I get back into my 3-week series on this channel, if that makes sense to you. So probably I'll just stick with these decks for the 50 days and start incorporating those others from the Falconier-Wegner tradition when I go back into my weekly videos. That's probably what I'm going to do, but I can change my mind. I might start incorporating them earlier. We'll see how it works out. So friends, that's my plan. What do you think? Come join me. Come join me starting January 1st on this deep dive into this interesting, complex, and different deck. Now, it is different. The creator of the Tarot of the Holy Light, Christine Payne-Towler, says it's a different deck. She reads with it differently from her own, but she says it's a good read for her. So let's see if it's a good read for me too. So friends, there we are. If you're still here, hit the thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you got something out of this video and others might get something out of it as well. Pass it on if you know anybody else who might be interested in a deep dive into the CC Zain deck, the Egyptian Tarot, also created under the auspices of the Brotherhood of Light. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed and hit that alarm bell so you get notifications of when I start uploading these daily videos. Yeah, and comment below. What do you think? Do you use this deck? Have you considered using this deck? What would you like to see from this deep dive series? Is there anything I might be able to do that would benefit you as I go through this deck? Let me know in the comments below. Okay? So friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.